Finally, the last ride line for Overdress Set 9 is here, so let's begin. But first, cards for the last few days, which we actually don't have any other than Dokuvan, so let's go with that first. We start off with Enlightened Edge Dragon, which is a grade 2 with taking power in the skills. Act Rearguard. Once per turn, if you persona ride this turn, cost Soul Blast 1, discard a card from your hand. During this turn, this unit gets plus 5 key power, and then you choose one set order from your drop zone and add it to your hand. And then you choose one set order from your drop zone with a different name from the one that you just add to your hand, and add that card to your hand. Basically letting you recycle 2 set orders in a turn. It's not too bad. It is a persona ride, which by that time you would probably have 2 set orders ready at your drop zone. And depending on the deck, this is actually going to be really good because you're going to be putting a lot of set orders in your drop zone. I would say it's generic and you could run it in your own leisure. Next for the Brandgate Dragon Tree unit, that being Dragon Tree Fallen Fruit, Royd Agulis. Grade 1, 8 power and skills. It has the same Dragon Tree unit ability where when placed on rearguard, you can cast 1, choose one rearguard circle without a Dragon Tree marker on it, and then you put the Dragon Tree marker on it. And then the unique skill is that auto rearguard once per turn when your set order is played to your order zone from hand, cost combat 1, look at top records deck, choose one unit card among them that is grade less than or equal to your Vanguard and call it to rearguard in the same column as this unit, and then of course shuffle your deck. Similar to the other Dragon Tree cards, just more calling. And based on reading all these skills, if all these Dragon Tree units could actually be played in the same deck despite being in different nations, I actually see a little trend where you could actually call all 5 Dragon Tree units, which is probably the goal of the deck. We still need to see what the Dragon Tree boss does though. And then we got a new promo that could practically work for any Dark State deck that uses 4 or more soul from a Vanguard skill. That being Flower of Ruin Council Impusa, grade 2, take your power and skills. Auto, front row rearguard. When you soul blast 4 or more cards at the same time for the cost of your Vanguard, during this turn, if none of your units stood by card ability, you can stand this unit. Keep in mind, if you use something like Rocker Door to restand itself, you have to use that card first before you use this one. But anyway, to continue off the skill, if you stood it by this ability, when the turn ends, cost retire this unit, choose one grade 2 or higher unit card from your soul and add it back to your hand, which is of course very helpful. I really like using this card, especially for Dredge Old. It's just unfortunate that it's a promo. And now to the Tuesday stream. First up, before we go to the cards itself, we're going to start off with this part where this character is going to be playing the new ride line for Stokeia. And then for Festival Collection 2023, we're actually getting lyrical support for all the ride lines of Lyrical 1. Based on artwork, they all look Easter themed, but I actually hope for them to be new forms or evolutions of the current ride lines, but I don't really see that exactly happening, but all I can do is hope. The set will also contain a new Regalius piece along with reprints of D-Series Sentinels. I'll take it, more reprints of generic cards the better. And now to the new Almajester ride line. Here's the starter, Almajester Pippis equals Muchi. And then we go to the grade 1 with 8 key power, Almajester Schwarsh equals Sparta. The skill is auto when rolled upon by Almajester Tehran equals Dyna, aka the grade 2, Soul Charge 2, and if a critical trigger was Soul Charge, draw a card. FYI, if you watch the anime, this whole deck revolves around using critical triggers, and basically if you soul charge them. And then after that, you want to build up those critical triggers that you soul charge to the bind zone for more skills, which you will see later. But anyway, with the second skill, act rearguard once per turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, costs bind a trigger unit from your soul, and this unit gets plus 10 key power until the end of turn. It's nice that it didn't say just specifically critical triggers. It could be any trigger. Main focus will be the criticals, but it's nice that you also have variety to use for this skill. And then to the grade 2 with 10 key power, Almajester Tehran equals Dyna. The skill is auto when rolled upon by Astoria, choose a Almajester Schwarz Sparta from your soul and call it to rearguard, along with this card. So literally by riding your main grade 3, you get to call 2 units. That is pretty good, especially when we know the grade 1 has its own unique skill compared to other generic ride line grade 1s. And one key thing is that it says Astoria, meaning that if there's a new grade 3 Astoria that you could use, there's a little future proof right there. But anyway, to the second skill, which is also a unique skill. Act rearguard once per turn. If your Vanguard is Almajester, costs counterblast 1, choose 2 trigger units from your drop zone and put them to soul, and this unit gets 5k power for until the end of the turn. Nice that it's an act, and it makes it where guarding has its own value as well. And of course, putting more trigger units in soul is also really powerful because you're going to be soul blast binding them. At least the crits anyway. The other triggers will be used for power. Finally, to the grade 3 with 13 power, Almajester Astoria equals Unica. The skill is Auto Vanguard. When a trigger unit is soul blasted by a unit's abilities cost, choose one of your units and until the end of turn, it gets plus 5k power. By the way, this stacks. So meaning if you use other units to soul blast triggers, well, you get more 5k powers right there. And speaking of soul blasting triggers, second skill, Auto Vanguard. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, costs soul blast 3, buying all critical triggers that were soul blasts for this cost as well. And then perform all the following abilities based on the number of critical triggers in your bind zone. If you have at least 1 crit, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. At least 2, until the end of the battle, this unit gets plus 1 critical. At least 3, until the end of the battle, this unit gets drive plus 1. And this is why I said the critical triggers are the most important triggers for this deck, while using other triggers for means of power. If you're one of those people who have bad luck always soul charging triggers, well, here's the deck for you. But in seriousness, I actually like this deck's mechanic. I like the focus of using triggers in soul for power, while using the crits for even more power, which is going to be the most played trigger anyway. This also means you as the player for this deck will need to think about whether to use your guards or not, because you can end up wasting shield value for this by basically doing overguarding, but there are some dark stage cards that can soul charge cards from the drop zone, which is nice, and there's also a way to do hand soul charging. Now, is it worth getting rid of 15k shield? That is up for you to decide, but overall I do like the mechanic. It also kind of makes guarding not wasted as well. Oh, and this card cannot be counterblast denied. I think I'm going to end up playing this deck. I already like its design, but now the playstyle also interests me. And now to a support card. Gitz Peak Griffin. Grade 2, tank power and skills. Auto, when placed on rear guard, if your Vanguard is Almajester, choose 2 trigger units from your drop zone and put them to soul. More ways to put your trigger units to soul, and I still remember that one common in few sets back that lets you put grade 0s to soul from your drop zone. But anyway, second skill, count Rearguard Guardian. If your bind zone has a critical trigger, this unit gets plus 5k power and 5k shield. You see, crits are the most important trigger in this deck. And yes, the power stays on your opponent's turn as well. Overall, just more defensive value, which is also pretty nice because you might end up doing some over guarding in some cases with the crits, especially early game guarding, just to put more stuff to soul so you can just bind them. So that extra shield value is also nice. So that's it for these new reveals of the Almajester ride line. What do you guys think of it? I think it's just a cool ride line overall. Like I said on the review of it, I really like the mechanic of it of soul blasting triggers, and then getting stronger based on how many triggers you soul blasted, especially on the focus on crits. And I hope it's not too expensive because I really like the design, and now I'm interested in its playstyle as well, so I'm probably going to end up building the deck. But in that's it for this, and see you all next time.